I played 100 realistics and this is how it went. I'm going to be analyzing each match and going over the things I did wrong, the things I did right. Anyways, enjoy. For the first game, I trapped the player with a cone, hit it for 90, edit down, and then finish out the kill. It was pretty clear that this player was pretty inexperienced considering he runs inside the house and then I just full piece him. So I ended up just using this against him in these next few rounds. Here the player forgets to establish piece control, so I just take advantage of that and get the kill. Ultimately, they kind of gave up. They were just AFK or something, I don't even know. It was clear that this next player wasn't too great considering they kind of put themselves in bad positions time after time after time. So I kind of just used that against them in these matches. Our next player was much more skilled, but he was definitely predictable and I used that against him until, well, he left the match. The next player was, well, interesting. And I don't know exactly what's going on with this guy, but he seemed to be doing some very interesting things, and I don't exactly know why. But I definitely predicted his alien movement and used it against him in all of these fights. Now in this fight, I outsmarted the ramp and got the final kill. Until, well, let's just skip over this one, please. Anyways, we got him back in the next match. And pre-priest controlled him in this one. Now fighting the fourth player, I could definitely tell he was more skilled than the rest. He obviously had some issues with some of the moves he was doing, but he definitely had to find piece control. Until, well, he left. Now this next player was pretty terrible, so I'm just gonna roll a few clips of me completely dogging on this guy's butt. And he left too. Until we found the next player who was pretty much just as bad as him. In this one, I took advantage of his lack of piece control and finished out the fight. And again in this clip. And again, and again. It was pretty clear at this point that the guy didn't know what he was doing, so I just kind of used that against him, full pieced him, used my mechanics, and it seemed to work out that way. Until, well, I'm pretty sure he gave up, as he was literally facing a wall in a phase stare, just completely hopeless. I won that set of matches and moved on to my next opponent. Now this guy definitely knew what he was doing, so I decided to play a bit more defensive and use smarter angles. I cone his box here, full piece him, and get a nice headshot, spraying him to death in this next round. At this point, I noticed that this guy didn't play well under pressure, so I decided to play more aggressive, ultimately finishing out the kill. I continued to do this in the next few rounds. Until I guess I played a bit too aggressive. Don't worry though, we got some payback. Then closed out the last match with a W. In this next match, I get a little too aggressive and this guy pulls out the SMG on me.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just...
Anyways, for our next player, I would say he was pretty terrible just because he didn't really establish any piece control throughout any of our fights, but I took advantage of that and used it against him. That is until, let's just, keep it going. Now, while the player couldn't really establish a lot of piece control, he definitely had aim, as he got me pretty low in a lot of these fights. However, I go for a cheeky peek here and end up getting the final elim. In this fight, I am pretty much boxed up, noticed he was on my wall, and edited it, went for a shot, and got him. It's very important that you acknowledge what's yours in a fight, as it may lead to the victory of that fight. In this fight, I crack him off bat, take his wall, and get the final elim. In which, you guessed it folks, they left. This next player proved to be pretty unexperienced when it comes to building, so I used that against him in these next few fights. Until after killing an AFK player so many times, I had won the set. In this next fight, I took advantage of the enemy's unplaced builds and ultimately closed out the kill. For this one, all I can say is brrr. I guess that SMG spray got a little too mad, as well, he left too. And as for this guy, well, I think he needs to gain some confidence because my guy's literally running away and chugging himself. I don't know what he's doing. Also, just on a side note, confidence is really something that you guys need to learn if you don't already have it, because it's going to be really helpful for you in these arena fights and scrims and tournaments. And if you don't have it, well, you're just not going to win any fights because you won't be able to pull off what these other pro players can. Anyways, in this next fight, I just completely outplayed him with the harpoon. I continued to use my confidence against him, just getting in his box, full piecing him. You know how it goes. But I used this against him in these next few rounds. Until ultimately I was awarded better player and moved on to my next set of matches. This next player was definitely quite decent as I go for a dumb peek and he takes advantage of it. So in round 2, I ended up switching it up, taking some smarter angles, and ultimately getting the final elim. I did this again in the second match, getting a nice little cheeky jump shot on the enemy player. I ultimately realized that I could really counteract this guy's playstyle just by playing for some smarter angles and taking my time. Until, well, I went for a not so smart angle and the enemy player took advantage of that. Don't worry though, we brought it back in the next round with a cheeky one pump. Yeah, well, about that, just, don't even, yeah, anyways, this next player definitely had some decent piece control, but I used his lack of confidence against him as I pushed his box aggressively. Now in this fight, I predicted his edit, set my crosshair, and then pre-fired straight to the dome until he snuck up and got a nice shot on me. As for this fight, I just don't even know what he was trying to do here. In this next fight, my opponent hits me hard, and then I use his aggressiveness against him. When fighting this player, I definitely noticed that his building skills were quite good, so I had to use my own to counter his, which you can actually see in this next fight here. Now in this fight, I actually end up catching him off guard, flipping a stair, and then cracking him. I later push into his box, get a little aggressive, and get the final tag, winning that fight. Now in our third to last fight, I end up getting a really nice cone here, and then ultimately pushing in the box, playing a little aggressive, cone him, and then ultimately get the final shot off and get that win. Now our next player actually showed some decent building, but he actually let his guard down as I popped this mini, and I take advantage of that. Now in our last match, we actually end up getting a nasty quick scope on this guy. This means that out of 100 matches, the score was 92-8. I would say this is really good considering the fact that a lot of these games were with some fairly decent players. And I would definitely say that I've improved lots after playing all these realistics. Would I recommend this to you guys? I would. I think this is a great way of practicing your aim, mechanics, and getting a realistic situation so you can practice for an in-game situation such as a tournament or arena. That's going to be the end of the video, everyone. Anyways, peace.